Hello, welcome to Bentley's Backwards Bushcraft, and this is Richard. I'm just sitting here enjoying the sounds. Woodpecker back there. Anyway, the video that is the surprise announcement should already have been up, so everybody should know now that I have always believed, or I've always considered, there we go, I've always considered my outdoors survival training a part of my martial art. I never really expressed that much, and I don't teach it at the dojo. That's not something that I really teach at the dojo. But for me, they're intertwined and they're not separate. I never really expressed that before, so I just thought I would do a video to express that. So anyway, so now I'm out here in the woods and I'm getting ready to discuss some martial arts, some combat martial arts, or dojo martial arts. The training aspects that involve my combat, or my training in the physical way, not my survival or anything like that. But I have some notes, so you'll probably see me looking down and looking at my notes. They're kind of random and maybe not so organized like me. It's just the way I live, and I'm happy that way. But anyway, I've done this sort of video many times. I don't think I've really posted it. I may have discussed it briefly in some aspects on other videos, but I don't know, I just felt like doing this today, so this is what I'm doing. So my style of martial arts I call Zenshin Aikido, Aikijitsu. Now, it is not just Aikido, and it is not just Aikijitsu, or it is not just a combination of Aikido and Aikijitsu. It's much more than that. My dojo, Zenshin Self-Defense Academy, is just that. It's an academy. It's not a specific one single thing. It's a broad, eclectic gathering. And that's very American. We tend to like to be eclectic gatherers. I mean, we're a melting pot. That's just how we are. And I express that in my way of doing martial arts. So here's some aspects. Basically, is my system this, or is it not? I've only got 4 things here. I just quickly jotted down. I'll probably randomly go through some other stuff, but anyway, eclectic, yes. The old traditional martial arts were not quite eclectic, and if they were, it wasn't really expressed, and it wasn't expressed proudly to some degree. But I am very proud of the fact that my system, for me, because Zenshin Aikido, Aikijitsu, I developed for me. I created it for me, the way combat works for me. So I'm just glad that there are other people that it works for. But I did design it around what works for me and how my body works. So is it eclectic? Yes, it is, and I'm very proud of that. Is it effective? I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to say for me. It is very effective for me. It also seems to be effective for my students, because most of them stick around, the ones that I do have. Is it easy? No. No. I'm not even gonna pretend to tell people that this is something easy to learn, easy and quick to learn, because no, it is not. Now, can you get an idea in a single class? Especially if I'm going to do like a self-defense class, and I don't like saying women self-defense because it's just self-defense, but let's just use the term women's self-defense class, okay? Can I teach a woman how to effectively and skillfully defend themselves in an hour or two? I can give them the idea of how it would work effectively and efficiently for them, but unless they train it and train it a lot, it's probably not going to be effective or efficient for them. You know, it's not going to be effective or efficient for anybody unless you train it and get used to doing it. Nothing is easy like that. It's not. Anything worth doing isn't that easy. So is it easy? No. Is it fast? No. No. I don't claim to be able to produce a black belt level student in a year or two. It isn't going to happen. I can guarantee that's not going to happen. Guarantee it's not going to happen. Let's see here. What and how I teach takes a long time to get really good at. Only effective repetition over a long time truly makes you very skilled. I'm just reading that straight from my notes. So anyway, yeah, I don't care what someone tells you. If they tell you they can take you into a class and teach you how to defend yourself in one seminar, oh, they're better than I am, I can tell you that. Because, they can give you an idea and some concepts to work on, but you're not going to get good at it just in one seminar or one class. It isn't going to happen. I do have a belt system. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to run through the belt system. I have 4 different colored belts. I have a white belt, a blue belt, a brown belt, or red. I like the idea of a red belt instead of a brown belt. I don't know, it just looks better to me. And a black belt. 4 belts. Now, those belts are broke down into tips. The white belt, you have the white belt, then you have first tip, second tip, and third tip. Then you have blue belt. First tip, second tip, third tip. Then you have brown belt, first tip, second tip. Then you have the black belt. Alright, so now black belt goes from 1st degree to 10th degree black belt. Let's see. Now I have a very skilled blue belt. She just got her blue belt recently, within the last few months or so. She just now got her blue belt. So she went from white belt to first tip, to second tip, to third tip, to blue belt. And that's where she's at right now. She's been with me for 2 years. So, it basically took her 2 years to get through her white belt material. And she's dedicated and consistent and really trains. She really does. And it took her 2 years to get to blue belt. So is my system fast and easy? I would say no. I would say no. Now, I do have a black belt in Zenshin Aikido Aikijitsu that came to me as a brown belt in another system of Aikido. Now, generally, and I don't want to delve too deep into this rabbit hole, but generally, when someone comes to me from another school or another style or whatever, regardless of their level, well, not generally, always. There's no generally. When they come to me from another school, another system, or whatever, they start at white belt just like everybody else does. Plain and simple. Now, he never wore belts for, like, ever. He didn't wear belts very much at all. but when he did not wear his brown belt. He started out with a white belt, wore his white belt, went to blue belt, and progressed into brown belt, and then got his black belt. Now, I always considered him a brown belt in Aikido, always did, but he still started with my belt system and worked his way up. Now, considering the fact that he was seriously a really good, legitimate brown belt in another style of Aikido, it only took him 2 years to get a black belt. But basically what it was he went from a brown belt in another system to my black belt, and it took him 2 years to do that. He really had the basics. I mean, my Aikido, although is different than other Aikidos, it's really not different. And I don't know how to explain that. I do my techniques slightly different in some aspects, but Ikkyo is still Ikkyo. You know, Gokyo is still Gokyo. Shiho is still Shiho. It's just difference in the way I apply them or execute them in certain ways. So he basically took 2 years to go from brown belt to black belt. Now, some people may say, "Oh, well, that's pretty good. Brown belt, you know, brown belt to black belt in 2 years. That's pretty decent." Other people may say, "Oh, well, that took way too long to go from brown belt to black belt." I think that the normal, common, average person would probably take no less than 4 years, and probably more to the line of 6 to 8 years to start completely at the beginning with no real experience in martial arts, or with experience that doesn't really apply to my system. Probably anywhere from 4 to 8 years to get from white belt to black belt in my system. Now, with modern day martial arts, that's a considerable amount of time. Now, maybe if, you know, we lived 150 years or 100 years ago, or maybe even 50 years ago, you know, that wouldn't be so odd. But I think for modern day martial arts, not getting your black belt for like 8 years of serious, honest training is probably extreme to a lot of people, when there are systems nowadays, and very, very common, there are systems that you can go in fresh day one and a year later come out with a freaking black belt, and that's not even kidding. So anyway, I could talk about that topic for a long time, but I think I probably shouldn't and won't. Let's see. Kata. Alright, now, Kata is an interesting topic for me, because I began martial arts when I was 12, and this was back in the 70s. Kata was, and it was a Shorin-ryu karate style, Matsumura style Shorin-ryu karate. That's really all it was Kata. Kata was the thing back in the 70s and even in the 80s. I mean, it was just all about Kata. And even, I mean, like serious, legitimate dojos. Nowadays, it's pretty much all Kata, because in my view, my opinion, just me, most of the time, the reason I think dojos, regardless of the style, most of the time, focus on katas, and that's pretty much all you get, is because they don't really have anything else to teach you. I just don't think they have anything else to teach, and they don't know anything else. So I think kata is that fallback of, oh look, you're learning this, you're learning that, and anyway. So when I was younger, and even till recently, I think, I had no use for kata whatsoever. Especially when I was younger, it was useless to me. I mean, just, I saw no redeeming qualities whatsoever from kata. I really didn't. I I can't say that it has changed a massive amount right now, but the older I've got and the more training and the more education and the more skill and the more experience I've gotten, I can't say that I've completely become flexible with this idea, but I have kind of bent a little bit. I'm no longer that solid, strong tree that stands in the wind and gets pushed and pushed and pushed. Now I'm a little more flexible with it. I bend a little bit. I'm not gonna break, and I'm not gonna hit the ground. I'm telling you that right now. But I do bend a little bit more with it. I do see maybe a little bit of redeeming quality in them now that I've gotten this far. Now, I do not rely on them. I will not say, nor will I ever believe that kata should be the basis of everything you do. And whoa, okay, my paper fell and it hit my leg. I thought it was a critter. Now there we go. So anyway, I'm gonna say kata maybe if you give it 0% to 100%. When I was younger, it was absolutely 0, and I would even go into the negatives with that. I think maybe at the present time, I would give kata maybe a 1 or a 2, and for the majority, I would say it's really, for me, weapon-based and oriented. With my Jo, with my boken, the sticks. Now, I don't consider what I do with my sticks kata, and it really determines what you consider kata. Okay, to me, I don't know, maybe I have a different opinion or viewpoint of kata. I don't consider training skills and techniques necessarily a kata, even if you do them consistently in the same manner each time. A kata to me is more of a extended combination of arranged techniques done specifically in a certain manner each time, and it doesn't necessarily have to abide by a combat or effective realistic train of thought. Now, I do have well, my students are not quite at the 4th form for my Jo yet. Most of them are not. I'm still having a little bit of difficulty getting them to the 2nd one. Patience, as I said, is a blue belt, and she's having difficulty with the 2nd one. She's got the 3rd one better than she does the 2nd one. She hasn't even really started on the 4th one yet. And as far as consistent, reliable, and current students, she's the highest ranking one that I have right now. Lost my train of thought. Now, as far as hand-to-hand, like empty hand katas, with my Zenshin Aiki, presently, I do not teach any of my students any hand-to-hand, empty hand katas. Mainly because I keep a lot of that stuff for a specific kids-oriented, more karate-esque like style classes, and I am presently not teaching any of those. So empty hand katas just really aren't a thing for my students right now. And again, there are some weapon forms that I do with my students. Now, the boken, I think, is an example of the 5 boken techniques that I teach. could be stylized as a kata, or they could be all put together and form a kata or something like that. But I do not consider those kata. I consider those more just practicing technique. So there again, I guess it really depends on what you consider kata and how you define it, really. And where are we at here? Okay, so training, the concept of pressure training, pressure testing versus learning. This is a big one for me. A big one for me. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to set my notes down here because I'm probably not going to need them for a few minutes. They're probably going to fall down. Hold on a second. There we go. So pressure testing versus learning. A lot of people consider the concept of training. Okay, so we do this here. All right. So let's say that we're practicing a technique, right? So to learn the technique, we do this. So let's say we're going to punch our uke. We're going to punch the person. And we punch. We either go really slow or we go slow and extend it and just leave it there. Okay, a lot of people consider this mannequin training. All right, so because you're here, boom. And then you let them do ba 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 boom boom boom, whatever they do, right? Is that unrealistic? Yes. And maybe that much. It's unrealistic, but there's a purpose for it that is not unrealistic. And people cannot wrap their heads around it. Well, certain groups of people cannot wrap their heads around this concept. All right. Pressure testing. For those of you who don't know what pressure testing is basically using a technique on an unwilling and uncooperative uke who's going to do what they can to make it not work. Basically, you go at it to see if something really works for real. All right, you pressure test it. Learning, you don't learn that way. Oh, there's something running around out there. You do not learn that way. You do not learn that way. All right, you cannot pressure test something you have not even learned first. Plain and simple. Now, there is a group of people, there is a system, a style, and there's more than one, but I like to pick on this particular one. There is a group of people who train in a martial art who consistently believe pressure training is the only way to find out if a technique works. Well, I like pressure testing. I do. I just don't think that that's a viable teaching tool. You can't learn a technique by pressure testing. All right, you have to already know it. Pressure testing is used after you've learned the technique in the freaking first place. All right, now, how do you learn the technique in the first place? All right, it's not by somebody who's sitting here going like this. You're not going to learn a technique when they're doing this to you. All right, you can't learn a technique when someone does that to you. So you do this. Then you apply the technique to me. Now, even if it's ridiculously unrealistic and there's, let's say, 7 different techniques involved. I'm using that on purpose, so for those of you who know. But let's just say that, boom. Now, you work 7 techniques on that arm. All right. Now, I'm not saying in real life someone's going to, like this, and you're going to pull 7 techniques out of there. I'm not saying that. People who believe that have no freaking clue what they're doing, okay? What I am saying is this here. You work the techniques until you get good at them. This takes a long time. You get good at them. Now, once you get good at them, let's say you get good at all 7 of those techniques that you're doing. bam, 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 boom. You know, you get really good at doing all 7 of those on this. Okay? Now, you pick one of those techniques and you practice that just by itself, like this. Then you practice it like this. Then you practice it like this. Then you practice it like this. Okay? But until you get past that, there's no reason to pressure test anything because you haven't learned it yet. Alright, so pressure testing is important, but it's not where you start. It's not where you end either. There is no ending. But it's not where you start. You learn the technique. You get good at the technique. You get better at the technique. You get really good at the technique. Now you start pressure testing the technique. And it just keeps going. Okay? So that's my idea on learning versus pressure technique. And you can agree or disagree. I don't really care. Let's see. Training that is considered brutal or unrealistically mean or nasty. Alright, now, I have conflicting opinions, viewpoints on this particular topic. And regardless of how I truly feel, which I will express in a moment, I can argue both points on this and stand behind each one of my arguments, whether I'm for or against. It doesn't really matter. I can argue both sides of this, but I like being in the middle of brutality versus pansyism. That's the word I'm going to use, pansyism. And I think, honestly, just my viewpoint, like I said, everything I always say, whether or not I consider it fact or truth or whatever, still just my viewpoint, just my opinion. I consider that if you were to conglomerate all of the martial arts on the planet today, and you had to either say they were brutal, they were a decent balance, or they were pansies, overall, they're pansies. That's just my viewpoint. Now, of course, there's plenty of people that's going to disagree with me, and individual groups and styles are definitely not pansies, would be brutal. There are plenty of people that are in the middle. I think overall, if you were to conglomerate every martial art style into like say one imaginary style, and it was taught in the most popular the way it's taught today, they're pansies. So anyway, let's see here. Should training be brutal? And again, define brutality. You know, it's a personal thing, and all this is always personal. So you can't really say, you can't define what you believe and try to throw that on everybody. I'm that way with, I believe that about every aspect of everything that exists. All right, I cannot take my personal viewpoints, or I should say I shouldn't. People do it all the time. I should not take my personal viewpoint on anything and try to force that onto you or anybody else, because it's not my job. And I'll tell you this much, it's not your job to do that to me. I don't care who's watching this. You could be the highest, most powerful person on the planet, or you could be the lowest, non-powerful person on the planet. You do not have, in my viewpoint, the right to push whatever you want to believe onto me. So there we go. Now, brutality middle ground, pansyism. I would like to think that I am not in the middle per se. I would like to be at least 1 or 2 steps into the brutality, honestly. I am, in my view, I will never step over that line into pansyism. That isn't going to happen. I may walk up to the line sometimes and look over and look down into the valley of doom and the valley of wimpyism and the valley of pansyism. I may look over there and say, oh, you guys are hilarious. But I will not step into that pit. Won't do it. Now, I will take a couple steps over here. And maybe, if I'm going to take a walk through the wild side, it's going to be a walk through the wild side of brutality rather than whoop, just my personal viewpoint. Now, do I consider my martial art brutal? No, I don't. No, absolutely not. Now, if I had to define it by what pansies consider brutality, yeah, I would consider it more brutal than what I personally consider it. But, you know, who cares? When I came up in the 70s and 80s. Now, people say, well, we've learned so much more since then, and we know better now. Bullshit, you know? We've just been pansified. My viewpoint. Now, well, some people have been pansified. I don't think I have, and I don't think that I pansify my students, but I definitely don't, I'm not brutality, I'm not brutalizing them. But that's a point of view, really. When I came up through martial arts, and again, I started with Shorin-ryu karate, and they were pretty vicious. Honestly, my first sparring session as a white belt, I got a busted nose. I mean, I had blood dripping everywhere, you know. And you know what they did to me? They pulled me off the mat. They took me into the waiting room. They got a Kleenex. All right, now get back on the mat. That was it. Now, would that fly today? No. And you know why it wouldn't fly today? That's why. But anyway, that was how it was back then, and I personally don't see why it shouldn't be that way now, but it's not. Now, I don't do that to my students. If my students get a bloody nose, or, well, you know, honestly, I'm trying to think. I've never had a student get a bloody nose. But if they did, you know, they go fix it up, relax. I'm not going to say, oh, can I get, well, okay, maybe I'd say, okay, now get back on the mat. I might say that, but I wouldn't say it in a mean way. So, I would be a little more concerned about their bloody nose than what my instructor was back when I got my bloody noses in the 70s. Anyway, when I was first beginning MMA, and this was 2000s, early 2000s, well, late 90s, mid 90s to early 2000s, in that era, when I first started training with the first MMA group that I was training with, they beat the dog shit out of you, and I'm not kidding. I mean, they would hurt you. Now, part of it was just because they did not have the skills or abilities to not hurt you, but that was part of it. But they were serious about what they were learning, and I was serious about what I was learning, and that was just how it was. If you got hurt, you got hurt. I mean, like I've said many times, and I am grateful for this, for the first 6 months, I mean, they beat the total shit out of me. I would crawl off that mat and I would vomit into a bucket. And then I would crawl back onto the mat and still train for another hour or two. I mean, that is no joke. I mean, seriously. And that's what I like. That's what I wanted. That's what I needed. That's how it was. Now, even in the 80s, when I first started training Filipino Kali, which is a stick art. So, I mean, of course, this is just a stick off the ground, and it's definitely not like the broom handles and mop handles we used to use. But we would take the sticks, and when we would do techniques, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, we'd do the basic 12 rider. When we were disarming, we wouldn't necessarily hit the knuckles. We'd tap them like that. I mean, most people wouldn't even take that. They'd quit a dojo if you just got that to you. But we would hit the stick because it's less on the knuckles. We'd come in, wham! I mean, and there, see, it's broke. Yeah, that broke too. Anyway, we would hit you. When we would hit your arms, we would hit your freaking arms. You know? Now, this is a pretty decent stick, and it broke on my arm, you know, right here. But I'm glad for that training. I seriously am, because if I ever have to use it, and I shouldn't say if, because I have, but when I ever have to use this sort of stuff, I'm okay with it. I am almost 54 years old. Another, I don't know, less than a month, maybe about a month or so, I'm going to be 54 years old. Now, yes, I am an old, fat, bald guy. Won't deny that at all. But I would put myself up against any old, fat, bald guy. I put myself up against any 20-year-old. And even though I'm round and a little larger, does not bother me. You know, I could take it. I could take it. And the only reason I can take it, and will take it, and want to take it, is because of the way I trained back then. Now, would you consider that brutality today? Absolutely. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the way I trained in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s and 2000s, I mean, the way I've trained my whole life is considered by the pansies, is considered brutality. Absolutely. No doubt about it. I will not deny that. The way I was brought up through the martial arts was considered brutality. No doubt. But I am proud, I am thankful, and I am glad that that's how I was here and not here. Because if I trained this my whole life, I would not be what I am today. Would not be, I'm telling you. So, and again, I don't consider it brutality. Honestly, I wasn't getting beat up. Well, okay, let me take that back. During my MMA training, sometimes I got beat up just because the other guy wanted to beat you up. There was attitude and ego and testosterone and all that stuff with those guys. Absolutely, I'm not even going to deny that. There's a few times I got the shit kicked out of me just because they wanted to make sure I knew they were better than me. Absolutely. Now, is that unwarranted brutality? Not in my mind, really. Not really, not in my mind. But I'm a different type of person. I'm not this. I'm more over here. Maybe here. I'd like to consider myself here, not here. I think when you get over here, I think you get the reverse of these people over here. I think you get these people who just want to beat you up and kick the dog shit out of you just because they can and they want to look awesome and tough. I don't like that. I don't go for that, and I definitely don't do that. Now, my students, I do not like this. I'm not like this with my students. Only because most of them nowadays can't take it. Well, not can't, won't. Most of them won't take it. I'll be honest, I have not found anybody that I personally think would make it through the training I went through in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I have not met a single person that I teach, not trained with or practice with, but that I teach personally. I don't think I've met anybody that, oh wait, I have, Ron. But I don't teach him. Well, he isn't formally a student of mine, but Ron would. But other than that, my actual students, I've not found anybody, and I'm looking, I have not found anybody that would have survived this. Wouldn't have done it. Wouldn't have done it. I can't find those people, and I'm still looking to this day, because I want to find somebody that I can pass this on to, that can take over for me when I'm done. Well, I shouldn't say when I'm done, because I'm never going to be done. But when it comes time for me to pass this on to somebody, I'm looking for somebody. And it's never going to be someone over here. I'll be honest, I'll let my system die and disappear from existence before I give it over to any of these people. All right? You better be here, but I prefer you to be here. So anyway, brutality. Again, it's really an opinion thing. You can watch any of my videos on martial arts that I have on my channel. I've never had anybody comment, not even the snarky trolls. I've never had anybody comment that I am overly brutal or mean. Now, I have had people say that I'm brutal and I'm mean. I have had people say, yeah, he trains hard and mean and brutal and stuff. I've had a few people say that. Not on YouTube, but I mean in real life. But there again, so there, we got that. I talked about, I think I talked about the colleague class. I don't know if I mentioned it or not. But, and I know I've mentioned it before, but I don't know if I did in this video. When we did, oh yeah, with the stick, boom, boom, I would come home with red marks and bruises up and down my arms and on my ribs and body, and sometimes on my head. Not too often. We tried to avoid smacking each other in the head with the sticks. Didn't always work, but we tried. But bruising, welts, cuts, you know, those sticks break on you. They cut you up pretty decent, because that's happened. But through all of that, I've become what I am today. Proud and glad that I went through it. Proud and glad. I just haven't found anybody that can or will do that now. Let's see here. What are we going at now? Okay, we're on the second page. Now this is going to be generalized. Again, it doesn't mean everybody. Even if I accidentally or it slips out and I say everybody, I don't really mean everybody, but for the majority. Alright, so if I say everybody, don't jump my shit about it. I just mean majority wise. Alright, knife self-defense will get you killed. Yes. What I have seen in dojos, and especially on YouTube, that crap will get you killed. I have a very simple and specific small amount of technique that I use to defend against a knife. It works for me. Let me repeat that. Hold on. Anyone else listening around it? It works for me. So that's what I teach, and that's how I teach it. I don't do it very often, and I will. I do have one video, I think one video, on knife self-defense on my channel. I don't deal with it a lot because a lot of crazy knife techniques are just going to get you killed. And I'm not going to go any further with that on there. Alright. I shouldn't use the word karate, but karate as a blanket term for all martial arts, okay? I really should just say dojo, but karate self-defense or dojo self-defense will generally, at best, get you hurt and probably killed for the most part. Now, there are systems that say that they work self-defense and is realistic, but is it really? I don't know. You know, good, bad, or indifferent, I've had considerable amount of experience in the street fighting people. I've had considerable amount of experience self-defense in the aspect of policing. Yeah. I've had experience in a dojo on the mat, in a cage with another human being, and in a ring with another person. I have had all those aspects of self-defense, and I know what works for me, and I know it works. So that's what I teach. Now, if it doesn't work for you, I completely understand that. But just because it doesn't work for you doesn't make it useless and impractical and not good, or whatever other terms you want to use. It just means it doesn't work for you. That's why I don't like saying X style sucks. Because X style doesn't suck for everybody. It just may suck for me. All right. Business versus teaching. Okay. I'm going to read exactly what I wrote down here when I came up with this. I suck at the business aspect of martial arts. I suck at it. I'm not kidding. I have not the mind for business when it comes to martial arts. I don't. And to some degree, I'm kind of proud of that. Really. I am not good at the business aspects of martial arts. I never have been, and I never will be. No matter how much I want to get better at it. Now, getting better is different than being good at it. I'll never be good at it. I know this. Like I said, I'm almost 54 years old. I've been training since I was 12. My first dojo, I officially opened up my first dojo in 1995. And I've always sucked at the business aspects of martial arts, and I always will. And to some degree, I'm kind of proud of that. I have very small classes. I have little to sometimes no students show up. I do have a very small core of dedicated students that are there, that are dedicated, and it's been there for a considerable amount of time and will be. Now, I would love to have a very effective and profitable dojo that I can express and teach my system of martial arts and spread it to as many people as I possibly can, and eventually find that person that will take over for me when it's done, when it's over for me. I want to find that, but all of that I don't think I will. I don't think I'll get any of that, to be totally honest. I don't think I will ever truly, and I'm not looking at this pessimistically, and I'm not being down about it or anything, but truly, I don't think that I will ever have an extremely profitable dojo ever. I really don't. But I will still continue to work on that. Now, I don't deal with the business aspects of my dojo. That goes to somebody else. I have a business manager that deals with the martial or the business aspects of my martial art dojo. I have a person that specifically takes care of that for me as he's trying to teach me how to do it myself. He is really good at the business aspects of gyms and training and things to that nature. He is also a very skilled martial artist, but he doesn't teach martial arts. But he's excellent at the business aspects. I teach martial arts, but I suck at the business. So him and I together make one really great person. So anyway, I don't know, I just never have been able to wrap my head around the business aspects, because a lot of times the business aspects do not coincide with my belief of the way things should run in a martial arts school, and the way I want them to go, and the way I will do them. Doesn't always follow a business and profitable mindset. But if I follow the business profitable, I will be taking away from my martial art. I don't know if you can understand that. I hope you do. So anyway, I don't focus on kids. I don't focus on kids classes, and that's another reason that my dojo is not extremely or even moderately profitable, is because I don't focus on the aspects that make money in the martial arts. The aspects truly that make money in the martial arts is pretty much the opposite of what I want or am willing to do. I don't focus on kids. I don't focus on fluff, what I consider fluff, which is whatever dojos are teaching these days that have absolutely nothing realistically to do with combat or effectiveness. Kata is not the mainstay at my dojo. Daycare. I am not a dojo daycare. I am not. Now, if I want to be a profitable dojo, I need to be a daycare dojo. Now, I would say that I would not be opposed to separating an aspect of daycare dojo to create profitability, yet still not interfere with what I consider to be my real martial art. Two separate things. We got daycare dojo, profitable, crap, McDojo. You got Zinshin Aikido Aikijitsu, real, effective for me. Alright, separated. They do not connect, they do not intertwine. They will always be separate. If I were able to do this or be willing to do this, it would be in a box of itself. All this over here would be the real stuff. But you have to have this to make this possible. I just haven't gotten to the point of being able to or wrapping my head around doing the daycare dojo. Let's see. What do we got here? Rank and accomplishments at the dojo. Alright. That doesn't really come up too often with my students or even at the dojo in general. Of course, when you first show up, people want to ask questions about certain topics like your rank and where you got your black belt and this sort of thing, and and I've done several videos on that topic in general, so I don't really need to delve too much into that, but I did put this down as a topic. My belt rank and accomplishments rarely, if ever, are asked about past the initial questioning that generally happens when you have a beginner, someone showing up. My advice to everybody who questions me about my skills or my ranks or my accomplishments or whatever. I will go through it if they want to hear it. I'll go through the whole, this, and this. But what I really tell them is, listen, come to a class and watch me. Watch me teach. Watch me do the techniques. Just watch me. If you think that I have the ability and the skills that I claim I have, or that you're looking for to learn from me, if you see that, then train with me. If you don't see that, then move on somewhere else. I am not going to sit here and say, oh, I have this, and I did this, and I have 87 black belts in 280 different arts, and not going to do it. And it's not true anyway, but even if it was true, which it can't be true, but let's just assume, let's let's not get too stupid, and let's try to stay realistic. Let's say that I have 3 black belts in 3 different martial arts, and they're legitimate black belts, and this, that, and the other. They're most likely going to be, fluffy, just whatever kata oriented type, stuff. Let's say someone has that, and I'm looking for something for my kid to do on the weekends because I don't want to keep an eye on him. I'm going to ship him off to somebody else to babysit him for a while. That may be okay for someone like that. Nothing wrong with it. Okay, I'm going to teach your kid self-respect. I'm going to teach your kid the ability to focus. I'm going to teach your kid everything that you're supposed to be teaching your kid. How about that? And I'm only going to charge you $125 every class. But I will babysit your kid for 2 hours. Which is something you're supposed to be doing. So anyway, maybe people like that are looking for something like that. You may be able to run across somebody who still truly, and I'm saying this because a couple years ago I had somebody saying this, and I still laugh to this day. It's hilarious. Someone coming up and saying that they're looking for somewhere to train because they haven't been able to train with their old group, and their hands are registered as a lethal weapon with the local police department. And as soon as someone says that, I'm like, okay, you're never going to come back. You're looking for, if someone like that shows up and they tell you all that sort of fun stuff, they're probably not going to be back anyway either. So anyway, what was I talking about? Ranks and all that kind of crap. Yeah, if you want to truly know whether or not I'm skilled or whether what I do works, well, if you want to watch it, you can watch it and maybe get an idea. But if you really want to know, step on the mat. Just step, and that's not a challenge, by the way. I'm not challenging anybody. I don't have anything to prove. But, yeah, step on the mat. I have not, honestly, I have not had anybody come in the dojo and challenge me. I don't think people do that much anymore. Now, those crazy morons who think their martial art's the only legitimate martial art on the planet, and you guys know who you are. Anyway, they sometimes go around and go into schools when students or when teachers claim to be a black belt in their system. They'll go in there and beat the tar out of them for a little while and make them look goofy, but they make themselves look like morons as well. I don't claim to have a black belt in anything other than what I have a black belt in, and there aren't too many Aikidoists out there that are going to come and challenge me to prove my point. And if there were, that's okay too. But I don't claim to have a black belt in Shorin-ryu karate because I don't. I don't claim to have a black belt in Filipino Kali because I don't. I don't claim to have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I don't. But I do have skills in those aspects. I do have skills there. But I have not had anybody come and challenge me. But I don't get on the internet and claim that I'm a freaking black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu either. And I'm not going to claim that because I don't, and I never will because I don't want one. I am quite happy with my skill sets, and I do have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skill sets. Now, are they at black belt level? Nah, they're not, and I know that, but I don't care because what I do know, I know well, and what I do know, I practice. That's why I know it well, because I practice it all the time. Here's another topic. This isn't on my list. Hold on. Let me check my list real quick. Okay. I got one more thing on my list, but I want to talk about this topic that I did not write down. The student that comes in and trains with you, let's say he trains with you for... Let's say he's with you for a year and a half, 2 years, maybe even more. And he gets upset with you because he's not learning anything new. Everything's the same. And then you have to look at him, and I'm only saying him because in English it's proper if you don't know the gender, you just say he. That's still a thing. So, he looks at you and he says, oh, I haven't learned anything new in 6 months. And you have to look him in the eye and say, well, you haven't learned the stuff in 6 months that you're supposed to be learning. How can you learn something new? You've been with me for 2 years, dude, and you still can't roll properly. How can I teach you new if you still can't roll? You should have been able to do that the first 6 months. Well, I've learned Ikkyo. I need to move on to something else. You got the idea of Ikkyo. You haven't learned it yet. I've been doing Aikido for 15 years. I still haven't learned Ikkyo. I will practice Ikkyo forever. I'll practice all of them forever. People say, oh, Richard, you're so fluid. Your moves are so good and precise, and it works so well. How do you do that? I train it. I practice it all the time. I never stop, ever. I didn't learn Ikkyo and then say, oh, I learned that, let's move on to this, and never look at Ikkyo again. I didn't do that. I didn't learn Nikkyo, Sankyo, Yankyo, Gokyo, Shiho, any of them. Any technique, not even just Aikido, but anything. I didn't learn the basic 12 and the disarms for each one of those angles. I didn't learn those and say, oh, I know those, let's move on. No. I started Filipino Kali in the 80s. And I still, to this day, practice exactly what I learned. Well, maybe not exactly. I shouldn't say exactly. I've developed my own way of doing a lot of the stuff. But I still practice it today. And it's 2020, almost 2021. And I still do it. And I will until I'm dead. That's how you get good. That's how you get effective and fluid. And that's how it works. Yeah. He really did. He did this. He come in and he says, well, dude, I'm not learning anything new. You know? He told somebody else. He didn't tell me. He didn't tell me that. Well, he said it to me before, but he said it to other people too. I don't know if I'm coming back up to class. I'm not learning anything new. Well, dude, you haven't learned the old stuff yet. Yeah, get that through your head. So anyway, students that want to just learn something and then move on to something else, they're probably not going to stick with you anyway. Alright, so I have one more thing on here and I got to find it again. Learning martial arts in general, but self-defense or fighting. Okay, yes. So here we go. No disrespect to anybody. I have always thought and believed that martial arts was for combat, for real life street fights, for encounters that will happen to you in your daily life. I've always believed that's the true nature of what martial arts are for me. Maybe not for you, but for me, that's what it's always been about. That's why I did not stick with Shorin-ryu karate, because it wasn't based off of that. It was based off of something else. Not bad, not good. It just was based off of something else, and that's not what I was looking for. You can go to any common average dojo, regardless of the style, but again, karate as a basis for everything. You can go to any dojo and you can learn a martial art that doesn't necessarily have to do with any real combat or street-oriented self-defense realistically, and still get a very nice and welcoming and wonderful workout and be happy and feel you're gaining from it. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. What I disagree with and don't like, and this is a personal opinion and it's a personal viewpoint from my perspective. When I go into a dojo and I can clearly see that the instructor, well, first of all, is like 17 years old or maybe younger, teaching classes and teaching kids classes in self-defense, clearly has never been in a real freaking fight in his life. And this can be any age. I mean, I've seen 50, 60-year-old instructors that clearly don't know what they're doing and have never been in a real fight in their life, trying to teach self-defense. Drives me freaking nuts. If you're going to teach something that's supposed to work in the street, maybe, in my point of view, just maybe, you should have some real experience with that. I don't know, it's just weird thing that comes out of my mouth sometimes. It gets rolled around in my head. If you're going to teach something, I think maybe you should have realistic experience in that. Now, they were taught at their McDojo. Let me stick my notes right there so it doesn't keep falling. They were taught at their McDojo their specific self-defense techniques for this, that, and the other. And knife, let's not even get started with this stupid knife stuff. Anyway, you were taught a self-defense technique for whatever situation you're in. Maybe it would work if you get really skilled at it. Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying they won't work. Yeah, I'm not going to say they won't work. But if I'm going to be taught how to do something by somebody else, I want them to have lived it. I want them to have really experienced it. Because that's a big difference. It's a big difference between learning self-defense, real, actual street, real life self-defense from a person who's really lived it versus a person who's just teaching it at a dojo because that's how he gets free classes, because he teaches classes, or it's his dojo and he thinks he knows what's going on, and it's anyway, it's a big difference there. Big difference there. And for a person who's actually had legitimate fights, even someone who's just had legitimate fights as a sport fighter, kickboxing, Muay Thai, I'll even add karate tournaments to this aspect of it, MMA, whatever else sport-oriented martial art is out there. Even a person of that caliber can tell if someone has had a real fight in their life, or at least a sport fight. All right. Now, I've had a considerable amount of street fights. Now, it's not because I went out and started fights and was a thug or anything like that. Quite the contrary. As a matter of fact, I got picked on as a child a lot. So I got beat up a lot when I was younger because I was very passive, non-aggressive, and I just got picked on. So I got beat up a lot when I was younger. And as I got older and more experienced, a lot of my actual street experience came either directly or indirectly from the work that I used to do. I got into a lot of fights because of the work that I used to do. And to be totally honest, a lot of times they were encouraged. But I learned a lot from those street fights. And I'm not talking about somebody who just wanted to punch me. I'm talking about somebody who wants to stab you, somebody who throws canned food at your head. You know, I had a skateboard slung at me once. I had a guy had a mouthpiece in and was ready to, I mean, just go at it when I got to him. I mean, this dude was ready. Who walks around the street with a mouthpiece ready to beat somebody up unless somebody who's looking for a fight, right? By the way, that guy got 3 broken ribs, went to the hospital and crapped himself. So anyway, and then he went to prison. So anyway, oh yeah, and after that he thanked me. So I've had some serious, legitimate street fights. Anyway, thank you guys for watching Bentley's Backwoods Bushcraft. Try to keep in mind that I really don't want to sound like a brute, but I'm definitely not one of these fluffy bunny, goofball, pink fluffy bunny people. So anyway, thank you for watching Bentley's Backwoods Bushcraft. Enjoy the outdoors, even if it's your own backyard. I love doing these videos. I really do.